And good afternoon and a very warm welcome to Government House, Yarramla. Dawa Nuna, Dawa Ngunnawal. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present, emerging leaders, and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islands that may be gathered here this afternoon. My name is Paul Singer and I'm the Official Secretary to the Governor-General. And as this badge signifies with its cross quills, I'm also the Secretary of the Order of Australia, whose Council recommends awards and appointments in the Order's General Division to the Governor-General, who is the Chancellor and the Principal Companion of the Order. I'm also the Secretary to the Australian Bravery Decorations Council, the body which makes recommendations to the Governor-General for Bravery Awards. Before we start today's ceremony, I'd like to acknowledge that despite the challenges posed by the current pandemic, we are delighted to be able to host this ceremony in a COVID-safe manner. We're grateful for your understanding of and compliance with the measures that we've put in place to ensure everyone's safety. Today is a special day, not only for the recipients, but also for their family, their friends, and their communities. It is a day when we celebrate a diverse range of impressive achievements and service. The Australian Honours System provides a wonderful mechanism through which we as a nation can recognise and celebrate ordinary Australians doing extraordinary things. Since its inception in 1975, over 420,000 people have been recognised for their meritorious, bravery, military or national service. The Order of Australia is the principal means of recognising outstanding service. And it's important to note that nominations come from all parts of the community. Anyone can nominate. As staff at Government House, my colleagues and I are privileged to play a small part in the recognition and celebration of that achievement. We hope that we can make today an occasion that you'll all recall with pride for a long time to come. Shortly, I'll invite you to stand as Their Excellencies the Governor-General and Mrs Hurley enter the room, and then please remain standing for the singing of the first verse of the Australian National Anthem. The investiture will then begin in the order listed in your programs. After I read their names and citations, the recipients will enter the room from the doorway on my right, and after they've been invested by the Governor-General, will proceed via the central aisle to take up their seats at the back of the room. At this point, you might like to show your appreciation with a short applause as the recipients return to their seat. After the investiture ceremony, recipients will be invited to join with Their Excellencies on the state entrance stairs for an official photograph. And after those photographs have been taken, Their Excellencies and recipients will join with all guests in the dining room where refreshments will be served. So, ladies and gentlemen, please relax and enjoy this very special occasion. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand for the arrival of Her Excellencies the Governor-General of the Commonwealth of Australia and Mrs Hurley, and remain standing for the singing of the Australian National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are young and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strength then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Thank you. Please be seated.
A very warm and welcome from Linda and I and the staff here at Government House Yarramla on such a beautiful spring afternoon. We're delighted to have you here to share in a very special occasion for our somewhat nervous, I think, recipients who are waiting to be acknowledged this afternoon and acknowledged for a magnificent contribution to our country. On that note, I acknowledge that Government House sits on the land of the Ngunnawal people here in Canberra, and we thank them for the way in which they have cared for this beautiful part of our country for generation after generation, and pay respects to elders past and present. You'll have noticed that there is a degree of pomp and ceremony about the day, and that is as it should be. This is a very special occasion in the life of our country, and indeed here at Government House this is one of the highlights, if not the highlight, of each year. Our National Honours and Awards system was introduced in 1975 to replace the Imperial Honours and Awards system. There is one very special characteristic of the system, and I think may be unique, in that nominations, particularly for those in the General Division or the Civilian Division of the Order, come from the community, come from people's peers. So as we conduct the ceremony today, I'll just ask you to pay attention to the range of activities that people are being recognised for, because at the conclusion of the formal section of the ceremony, I'm going to issue you some homework. So be attentive. The last 4.5 years, Linda and I I was Governor of New South Wales, and we obviously engaged very heavily with the communities of New South Wales during a period of really desperate drought in some parts of the state. When I became Governor-General 12 months ago, one of my first visits was to far northern Queensland, central Queensland, around Julia Creek on Curry, which was still recovering from a massive flood that had occurred in February of last year. And of course, we've had floods in the meantime in our local areas. We've had a horrific bushfire season, which is still very strong in our memories. And now we're in the middle of managing and responding to a pandemic. Each of those events on their own would be enough to challenge the country. Having all four in such a short space of time has compounded the impact. And given the constraints put on us by the pandemic, Linda and I have not been able to travel far and wide as we would normally do over the last 3.5 months. But we've reached out and contacted and communicated with Australians using every virtual meeting app known to man, I would think, to discuss with communities, with community leaders, heads of not-for-profits and charities, how's the community faring, what are the issues, to support them, acknowledge their good work and urge them on. After every one of those meetings, we come away uplifted and optimistic about our country, because in every one of those meetings, we see the strength of character, the goodness, the big heart that is out there in Australia for each other. And that's what we're going to see a small bit of reflected in this ceremony today, as we acknowledge contributions to community from a range of your fellow citizens. It's a very important thing to celebrate. And on that note, I shall commence the formal ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, to be presented with the insignia of his appointment as a member in the Military Division, Air Commodore Andrew Heap, for exceptional service in aerospace capability management, operational support and organisational development for the Australian Defence Force. Air Commodore Heap has provided leadership and initiative in a career spanning over 36 years with the Royal Australian Air Force. He has held several command appointments, including as the Air Component Commander of Joint Task Force 633 on Operation Slipper, and as Commander of the Air Task Group supporting Operation Southern Indian Ocean. As Officer Commander, Number 92 Wing, he coordinated the withdrawal of the AP-3C Orion from the Middle East, and also oversaw the safe transition of command and control of the Heron Unmanned Aerial System from Air Combat Group to Surveillance and Response Group. As Commander Surveillance and Response Group, he oversaw the transformation of key capabilities, including the introduction into service of the P-8A Poseidon aircraft. Air Commodore Heap's stewardship and direction in each of his command positions has been exemplary. Air Commodore Andrew Heap appointed a member of the Order.
call him by his proper name, Craig. Congratulations. And, I know that's what the record says, Paul, but we've known him as Craig all his life, so congratulations. Great honour to present this to you, and thank you for the very much work on that. It's a very difficult task to us to do quite a number of years. Thanks, Rob. Well done.
To be presented with the insignia of her award of the Medal of the Order in the General Division, Mrs. Rosanna Kobielehorn, for service to table tennis. Mrs. Kobielehorn is one of those people who gives of her time most generously. She's been a board member of Table Tennis ACT for many years, with specific responsibilities for the para and school programs. In 2018, she was the driving force behind the running of the Australian Para Championships here in Canberra. According to the players and officials, it was the best para tournament ever held in Australia and set a high standard for future events. Mrs. Kobielehorn is a dedicated ambassador and advocate for the sport of table tennis. Mrs. Rosanna Kobielehorn awarded the Medal of the Order. To be presented with the insignia of his award of the Medal of the Order in the General Division, Mr. Bruce Wright, for service to the community of Tumbarumba. Mr. Wright is a respected member and stalwart of the Tumbarumba community. He has displayed dedication and commitment to a range of organisations over a lifetime of service. His most impressive and long-lasting contribution has been to local youth. He's led and fostered a positive and committed team who, through the Tumbarumba Dakota program, train high school students so that they can tackle the physical and emotional challenges of walking the Kokoda Trail in Papua New Guinea. Mr. Wright is the most effective mentor who has helped to equip young people with the skills needed to tackle the challenges they face in today's world. Mr. Bruce Wright awarded the Medal of the Order. To be presented with the insignia of his award of the Medal of the Order in the Military Division, Warrant Officer Class 1, Brian Busk, for meritorious service to the Australian Army in leadership, cultural reform and tactical expertise. Warrant Officer Busk has served in a succession of highly influential roles. As a senior soldier within the Rifleman Wing at the School of Infantry, he led a review which resulted in enhancements to the physical development of trainees and an improvement to skills testing. At the 2nd Battalion, his leadership was pivotal to achieving cultural change and developing relationships between the battalion and the ships companies of HMAS Ships Choules and Canberra. Warrant Officer Busk also played an important role in the design and implementation of the Australian Army Leadership Program at the Royal Military College, Duntrue. Warrant Officer Class 1, Brian Busk, awarded the Medal of the Order.
Very, very nice man. Thank you for the way you're showing that you did this.
To be presented with the insignia of his award of the Conspicuous Service Cross, Lieutenant Colonel Neil Peake, for outstanding achievement as a commanding officer of the 10th Force Battalion. Lieutenant Colonel Peake's leadership has transformed the identity and cohesion of his battalion. He implemented a training progression that promoted competent capabilities across multiple subunits, successfully breaking down long-held barriers between the squadrons and building a new one-unit identity. He distinguished himself as a commander of the brigade's High Readiness Composite Force Support Battalion. Lieutenant Colonel Peake's superior efforts were evident in the rapid and professional manner in which the unit responded to the 2019 Townsville floods. Lieutenant Colonel Neil Peake awarded the Conspicuous Service Cross. To be presented with the insignia of her award of the Conspicuous Service Cross, Lieutenant Colonel Ruth Weir, for outstanding achievement as the Current Plans Operation Officer at Headquarters 1st Division and the Deployable Joint Force Headquarters during the period 2018 to 2019. Lieutenant Colonel Weir was instrumental in facilitating Defence's contribution to the Australian Government's objectives for the Pacific Step Up program. She planned over 47 enhanced regional engagement activities that involved 10 countries and 1,250 personnel from across the Australian Defence Force. During the 2018 monsoon and cyclone season, she planned 3 humanitarian and disaster relief responses to Tonga, Papua New Guinea and to Fiji. Lieutenant Colonel Weir has made an outstanding contribution to contingency operations and international engagement. Lieutenant Colonel Ruth Weir awarded the Conspicuous Service Cross. To be presented with the insignia of his award of the Conspicuous Service Medal, Group Captain Matthew Barnett, for meritorious achievement as the Joint Operations Command Domestic and Counter-Terrorism Planning Team Leader. Group Captain Barnett was instrumental in the development and implementation of Operations Spade Atlas, Invincible and Indo-Pacific Endeavour 2018. He was also responsible for Plan Magpie, where his efforts in improving counter-terrorism capability delivered an entirely new joint effect. He led the Joint Operations Command review of the Australian Defence Force Liaison Officer posture that supports interaction with states and territories during critical incident management. Group Captain Barnett's achievements are in keeping with the finest traditions of the Australian Defence Force. Group Captain Matthew Barnett awarded the Conspicuous Service Medal. To be presented with the insignia of her award of the Public Service Medal, Mrs. Deborah Maguire, for outstanding public service to high-level delivery of whole-of-government security risk management for special events. Mrs. Maguire has driven the coordination of the security risk and threat planning process for high-profile major Australian events for over a decade. She's also overseen whole-of-government cross-jurisdictional security collaboration as Director of the Major Event Security and Risk Team for Emergency Management Australia. With her deep understanding of strategic security assessment, she successfully delivered risk mitigation for major sporting events and multilateral fora. Mrs. Maguire's contribution to the Australian public service and to the national community have been of the highest calibre. Mrs. Deborah Maguire awarded the Public Service Medal.
Certainly will.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that concludes the presentations for this afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've acknowledged each of the recipients individually. It'd be appropriate now, I think, to acknowledge them as a group. Please join me. Now to your homework. Particularly for those, again, in the general division, you'll notice the range of activities from sport to community involvement, youth development, and of course, if we had our normal, larger, non-COVID constrained ceremony, you would see a broader range of commitment and contribution to community by recipients. Your homework is to go back to your communities, your suburbs, and nominate the people who are doing similar things. Our system depends on the nominations. Of course, we can drive it from up here and promote it and support it, but we need nominations from you of those who are really assisting their communities. Now, what you don't see, again, with the small numbers, is that each year in our two lists, Australia Day and Queen's Birthday, of the total recipients, only about 40% are women. That's not good enough. We need to lift that number, and we know those people in our community. And similarly, our multicultural representation and our Indigenous representation is not where it should be. So again, I would urge you to go back, look through your community and nominate. I know that Paul will give you some details about how to do that. I look forward, though, to marking your homework in a year or so's time as people walk through that door and I present them with the recognition from our country. So please do that for me. Linda and I now look forward to meeting you all, spending some time together to celebrate this very, very special day in the lives of our recipients, and acknowledge as well your part and those watching in what they've been able to achieve. Thank you all.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to assist with the homework that the Governor-General has just issued, I do encourage you to look at the Governor-General's website, where you'll find plenty of information about how to nominate someone that you think is worthy for recognition within the Order of Australia. As the Governor-General has said, we look forward to welcoming those successful nominations back here to Government House for an investiture ceremony such as this in another year or two. Ladies and gentlemen, shortly I'll invite you to stand for the departure of Her Excellencies the Governor-General and the recipients, where they'll proceed out onto the state entrance stairs for a photograph. If I could ask for the guests just to remain briefly in this room until Their Excellencies and recipients have left. Refreshments will then be served in the dining room. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand for the departure of Her Excellencies the Governor-General and Mrs. Hurley and the recipients.